From our research 3 years ago, 95% of those we interviewed experienced racial microaggressions, and a similar number witnessed others experience it too. In 2022, it's 83%. And then this year so far, it's about 84% are experiencing it. So it's not really moving. The solution to help tackle it is called It's Not Micro. If you hear it, don't just ignore it. And I'm going to say, I love that strapline. If you hear it, don't just ignore it. That's come from some kids in a school in Hull, and they made a beautiful video, and we'll share it with you. And we're going to go and thank them. It's a fantastic line. Okay, we created It's Not Micro because 89% of allies said they would call out and challenge microaggressions. However, there is a but, and we'll come to this next slide. We know many allies feel they don't know what to say or what to do. They don't know how to intervene, or are uncomfortable to challenge when they hear them. And often this leads to no action, and a culture of an organization remains as is. Next slide. It's Not Micro is a solution to enable allies to become active allies. So we'd like to pose a question. Next slide. When you hear anything inappropriate, what do you do? Do you speak to the person who may be offended later? Do you speak to the person who said it later? Do you call it out in a moment? Do you speak to other colleagues afterwards, asking what they thought? Or do you ignore it? So just have a think of that. I know it's similar to the one earlier, but again, it's just something for us to think about. We know there's a lot of good intent, but often there is little meaningful action, especially when it's most needed. This is the bystander effect, and it causes hurt. Next slide. In a recent poll uncovered that only 16% of respondents believe microaggressions are regularly or quite often called out by colleagues. I think in today's poll, it's about 5%. So it just shows. Next slide. We asked, why are they not called out? Next slide. 59% said they don't know how to. Next slide. 77% said down to a lack of confidence or courage. 69% said it was because they don't know what to say. And 42% said it's fear or consequence from their employer or manager, which is quite worrying, I think. We understand it's difficult when we have to do something new or different. It's difficult when many of us do not like or want to avoid confrontation. But we need to get comfortable being uncomfortable to enable change to happen, because those who are the recipients of microaggressions have been uncomfortable all their lives, and it hurts. We are saying no more. This is where allies need to become active allies. However, we know the majority of people, allies, will not do anything or call it out in the moment. But in the moment is key, because people may not feel comfortable, don't want to be seen as an outsider, don't want to rock the boat. And as someone said, it's career suicide. But what does that say about a culture of the organization? Therefore, the majority by default become bystanders. And this is not being anti-racist or an active ally. Anti-racist and active allies are different. They will speak up when something is not acceptable. They may ask, what did you mean by that? Can you clarify what you're trying to say? I'm sorry, that's not acceptable. I don't think it's okay to say that. We need to start listening, acting, and changing by skilling ourselves up to get used to calling out, feel comfortable with it, and then make it normal as part of our language, because calling it out is going to be difficult initially. But let's put it into context. From our research, to meaningful tackle race inequality, the person at the receiving end of the comment or the person being excluded isn't the one who should be speaking up. It doesn't work. The peer group, who may also feel the pain or impact of what has been said to someone, again, it's not for them to speak up. It still doesn't work. What I will say, if you feel confident, comfortable to speak up, please feel free to do so. But we just know often it doesn't make a difference. For significant and meaningful change to happen, it is for an ally, typically the majority, to become active and to speak up. This is where your colleagues and the majority of staff can be the change. Next slide. So the idea behind the solution, It's Not Micro, is that it's launched during Race Equality Week in organisations across the UK and beyond. The concept is when someone hears something they feel is inappropriate, a microaggression, they could say something like, what do you mean by that? This was the key phrase suggested by the community. Or can I just check what you mean by that? Or use your own words. These aren't aggressive or confrontational, They just allow the person who made a comment to have a chance to self-reflect and explain what they meant. Maybe they were just clumsy with their language, but it just brings it to the agenda. Next slide. After the explanation, if it still feels like a microaggression, then the active ally could say, it's not micro to me because, and again, this would be possible if your organization signed up. We want our staff to call it out. We're supporting our staff. So this is okay. So then if you or a colleague heard it, it should prompt you to reflect, okay, yeah, what's been said? I agree. It's not micro. So again, it changes the culture. An active ally needs to be supported too. So this shows that inappropriate language or behavior is not accepted or tolerated in your organization. It's your organization saying no more. So by choosing wording that works for you, and in the guide there's a few suggestions, or whenever the need arises, you can say these simple but powerful words. Exactly. So what do you mean by that? In a very calm, composed, and non-aggressive but assertive way. Like anything else that makes an impact, we need to just do it and no longer be a bystander, allowing others to continue to get hurt. We need to skill ourselves up, get used to calling out, feel comfortable calling out, and make it the normal. It makes sense to practice it so the words become natural and part of our everyday language. So it will be easy to say that, and as whenever we need, we don't pause, we don't get stuck, and we don't ignore what needs to say. And as Nike would say, it becomes natural, we just do it. In a recent poll, 73% believe it's not micro will help tackle racial inequality. The impact of it, it's death by 1,000 cuts. Next slide. The gap between what organizations say and what they do, because we know a lot say there's zero tolerance. Next slide. And again, who should be calling it out? Again, an explanation behind that. Next slide. The active ally, which we've talked about, and who should be calling it out. The solution, how to go about it. So how do you do it? So again, this guide will tell you how to, and it's not as simple as just tell all your staff to start calling out. We provide some additional support and language and comms you can share with your colleagues. Next slide. Again, there'll be some easy steps of how to run it. Next slide. And then again, what we will provide is a 9-step guide. So how to go about doing it. So real supportive tool that's been built by the community to it.